The initial 53-man roster for the Eagles is set. And I say initial because there are still moves that got to be made. And speaking of moves, Howie Roseman, the little guy, did it again. Getting a tight end that's 6'5", 260 pounds, and runs a 4.4. Chalk another one up for the good guys. Dallas still stinks. Yo, by the way, King Dingbat here, and hope everybody's having a great day. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you're hanging in there. So the initial 53-man roster for the Eagles is set. And yes, there are a lot of surprises, a lot of shocks, some really interesting things the Eagles did. But remember, don't worry about it, because this roster, come week 1, will not look like it does right now. There are still moves to be made. And speaking of making moves, Howie Roseman did it again. And we're going to talk about it. So much to talk about in this video. But before we get into it, if you're new to the channel and you like the content, make sure you hit that like button. More importantly, make sure you subscribe to the most censored, the most throttled, pause, Eagles content creator in all of the internet. And if you've been subscribed for a while, I just want to thank you so much for all the support you give to me. It truly means a lot. And let me thank everybody. We had almost 2,000 people in the Philly Shakedown podcast this afternoon talking about the 53-man roster. Thank you guys so much for hanging out and being with us. Now, I want to jump right into this 53-man roster and everything that has happened so far, with the expectations that we are going to have a lot of moves coming up probably within the next few days. First thing first, let's talk briefly about the guys they cut. Here is the list. Eagles released players. I'm just going to go through it real quick just in case you have not been able to see this. Wide receiver Devin Allen, linebacker Quentin Bell, quarterback Ian Book, running back Kennedy Brooks, defensive tackle Robert Cooper, wide receiver Britton Covey. A little bit of a surprise there. Cornerback Mekhi Gardner. I like him. I'm hoping that he'll be back. Guard Julian Good-Jones. Wide receiver Jaden I'm Never Open Hazelwood. Defensive end Taron Jackson. Tight end Tyree I Want Another Chance Jackson. Linebacker Kyron Johnson. A wide receiver Johnny Where's My King. He got cut too. Linebacker Tyreek Maddox Williams. Let's hope he comes back as a practice squad guy. Tristan McCollum. Nicholas Morrow. Surprise. Wide receiver Joseph Nagata. Defensive end Janarius Robinson. Guard Tyrese Robinson. Tight end Brady Russell. Defensive tackle Olive Spaghetti. Defensive tackle Caleb Sanders. Cornerback Josiah Finally Scott. Guard Josh Sills. Punter Aaron It Don't Go Nowhere in the Air Sippos. Wide receiver Freddie I Take Punts Swain. Linebacker Ben Van Summerin. Safety Kevon Wallace. Where's Wallace, String? Where's Wallace? Wide receiver Greg Ward and defensive tackle Marvin Harrison. Waived, injured the following player, Trey Sermon, and then waived the following player from the injured reserves with injury settlement, Tyree Cleveland. So those are all the guys that the Eagles cut today. For me, the initial 53 or the initial cuts that really surprised me, there are a few. Kevon Wallace was a little bit of a surprise. I didn't think the Eagles were going to cut him, and I didn't think they were going to cut Nicholas Morrow. I thought they would have kept 4 linebackers. They kept 3 off-the-ball linebackers. So that was a little bit of a surprise to me. Devin Allen and Mekhi Gardner are the 2 guys I really wanted to somehow make this team. Hopefully they'll clear waivers and come back to the practice squad. So these guys, for those that don't know, that when they get waived, they got to go through waivers. And I believe there's 24 hours to get through waivers. If nobody claims them, the Eagles can then sign them to the practice squad, or they can sign to another team's practice squad. If anybody is to claim them, though, they have to put them on their 53-man roster. That's why it's like 90% of the time players get through waivers. I think we'll be okay. The 2 guys I'm sweating out is Mekhi Gardner and Devin Allen. Hopefully those guys will be back. But in reality, I think a lot of these guys will be back. I think Devin Allen will be back. I think Mekhi Gardner will be back. I think Britton Covey will be back. I think Joseph Nagata will be back. I think Tyree Jackson could be back. I believe, Howie Roseman already said that he'd like to bring Aaron Sipos back to the practice squad, which kind of, we'll talk about punter in a second, which kind of makes me think Sipos is going to end up being our punter when this whole thing is said and done. But those are the guys I wanted to see come back. I think Greg Ward, I don't know if he'll come back. I would love him to, but I'm not sure. And Kevon Wallace, it sounds like he's not coming back to Philly. So that's the initial cut list. To me, it's it's a little surprising you only have 4 wide receivers and that you only have 4 or 3 linebackers and you have 4 tight ends. But I will say this, the Eagles kept 7 cornerbacks, and congratulations to Eli Ricks, the most deserving undrafted free agent that I have seen in a long time. I believe Eli Ricks is going to be an absolute stud. I do. I like Rick. I like Ricks. I like his moxie. I like the way he plays. And if you look at that 3rd preseason game, if you want to go watch him in that 3rd preseason game against starting wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr. and look at the way he played him, you'll understand why the Eagles could not get rid of him. Matter of fact, if you look at Ricks and Goodrich and Job, I mean, these guys are all deserving of being on this roster. I think the Eagles had to keep 7 defensive backs, so I understand the play. Now, there were a lot of talks about a trade, right? We heard a lot about Jonathan Taylor, who ended up not getting traded, was put on the physically unable to perform list for the Colts, which means he can't play the first 4 weeks, which he's not happy about, apparently. He said they did it to spite him, so it's going to just get ugly there. But the Eagles didn't make a move. That's okay. Like I said, the Eagles don't need Jonathan Taylor to be good. They've got enough weapons. He might have helped, but they don't need it to be good. But they did make a trade today. So the Eagles traded for a tight end. Get this, okay? So the Eagles, for a 2025 6th-round pick, the Eagles acquired with a 2025 7th-round pick, Albert. Oh, God, they never make it easy with the names. And I know people wait for me to do this. So I'm going to do this my best, but I'm going to say his name once, and then I'm going to call him Albert O. But Albert, tight end, Albert Okwuebunam. They got Albert Okwuebunam. That's who they signed. We'll just call him Albert O. Now, or they traded for him, rather. Now, here's the thing with Albert Okwuebunam. He is 6'5", 258 pounds, 4th-round pick for the Broncos in 2020. He had 25 catches and 33 receptions for, he's 25 and had 33 receptions for 330 yards and 2 touchdowns in 2021. Played in only 8 games in 2022 and caught 10 passes for 95 yards and a touchdown. He's 6'5", 258 pounds, and by the way, he runs a 4.4. He runs a 4.4. So the Eagles obviously look at this kid. They see tremendous upside. And one of the reasons why they probably kept 4 tight ends is they probably look at this kid as a tweener between a wide receiver and a tight end. So that's probably why they kept 4 wide receivers. But as I said, this roster is not changed. Is not going to look like it does right now, week 1. There will be guys brought back to the practice squad. There will be guys they might put waiver claims in. There may be trades that they still make, and it's going to be interesting. Now, the most interesting position, you're a good team when the most interesting position to think about right now is the punter. But with Aaron Sipos gone, that means the Eagles' 53-man roster, their initial 53, does not contain a tight end, which means the Eagles will have to go get a punter and get him on the active roster. Did I say tight end? I meant punter. The Eagles will have to get a punter and get him on the 53-man roster. It sounds like Howie Roseman wants to get Sipos back on the practice squad, probably make some moves within the 53-man roster, and then bring him up to be the punter. That's what I'm thinking, but they also are going to work out some punters. Let's hope this whole Aaron Sipos thing is over. Maybe they could go out and get Matt Araiza, whatever his name, Reza. I'm not trying to disrespect him, but maybe they could go get him, something like that. That would be interesting. But it's going to be interesting to see who is going to be the punter, and then who's going to do your kickoff returns and punt returns. Now, kickoff returns aren't as big of a deal because all you have to do is fair catch and it goes to the 25. But you still need a punter. I'm assuming it's going to be Oz. That Oz will be the punt returner, maybe Boston Scott, the kick returner. And then, of course, if you bring Britton Covey back or Devin Allen, we'll see. There's still going to be several moves that the Eagles are going to make. So it should be interesting. Now, with that all said, and we're going to see how that all plays itself out. We definitely are, because there's going to be some interesting moves to be made. Okay, with that said, let me introduce to you the Eagles roster, the 53-man roster as it stands today. So at quarterbacks, you know we have 3, Hurts, Mariota, McKee. No surprises there. I like it. Running backs, and this is no depth chart. I'm not putting out a depth chart here. I'm just calling it out, from what I'm reading. So it is not a depth chart order because I'm going to say Kenneth Gainwell, DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, Boston Scott. I would have said DeAndre Swift as my number 1 running back, which I believe he is. But your running backs are 4 of them: Gainwell, Swift, Penny, and Scott. No surprise there. Wide receiver, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, and Oz. Now, all those guys should make it, but it is a little surprising that there's only 4 wide receivers at this point. Tight ends, you have 4. You have Dallas Goedert, Jack Stahl, Grant Calcaterra, and then Albert O. We'll just call him Albert O. I like the upside of Albert O. I think it's a total steal what the Eagles did there, but we'll see how he develops. But to me, I thought they would only keep 3 tight ends. Offensive tackles, Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson, Fred Johnson, and Jack Driscoll. Now, Fred Johnson was a surprise because they cut him, and then they brought him back on a 2-year deal. But they got 4 offensive tackles. They have 4 offensive guards: Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, Tyler Steen, and Sua Opeta. Center 1, that's Jason Kelsey. Now, when you get to the defensive ends, you have Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett. Your edge rushers, Hassan Reddick, Nolan Smith, Patrick Johnson. Defensive tackles, you have 7. Now, this was a little surprise. They kept 7. Here's what I think they may do. I think Moro Ojomo, coming back from injury, or he had a concussion, he may end up on the IR. And what the Eagles will do is then use that roster spot to bring up a punter when it's time. But defensive tackles, Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Milton Williams, Moro Ojomo, Marlon Tupulupu, and Contavious Street. I knew Street was not going to go. I had a feeling he would not go. I really like the Eagles' defensive tackle depth. I think they got a lot of depth there. Linebackers, and this, to me, is a little bit of concern. Okay, I'm not going to lie. Nakobe Dean, Zach Cunningham, Christian Ellis. It just seems like you should have 4 off-the-ball linebackers here. They only have 3. I thought Moro would make it for that reason. Look for the Eagles to possibly still add another linebacker on this squad. Cornerback, 7. Bradbury, Darius Slay, Avonte Maddox, Josh Jobe, Keely Ringo, Eli Ricks, and Mario Goodrich. And shout out to Eli Ricks once again for, to me, being the most deserving undrafted free agent I can remember in a very, very long time. Safety, you have 4: Reed Blankenship, Edmonds, Evans, and Sidney Brown. I believe week 1, if the safeties stay as they are, I believe week 1, your starters will be Reed Blankenship, and Sidney Brown. I do. I had Terrell Edmonds being my surprise cut. I thought that he was going to get cut. I didn't think they would cut Kevon Wallace. I thought Wallace had a pretty good camp. But they did, and that's the way it looks right now. And then special teams, of course, you have Jake Elliott, long snapper. You have Rick Lovato. And then right now, your punter, you have zero. You have zero. And then in your reserve injured list, Sean Bradley, Roderick Johnson, Zeke McPherson, and Charleston Rambo. And then, of course, Isaiah Rodgers is on your suspended by commissioner list. So that's the Eagles roster. What I'm expecting over the next few days is I expect them to go get a punter. I expect them to go and maybe add another linebacker and maybe another wide receiver or safety. I would look for one of those things to happen. But you definitely know for sure you're going to have to get a punter and bring him onto the 53-man roll. I mean, I guess you could be like, you know what? We're not punting this year. Forget punting. We ain't going to punt. We're just going for it all the time. And then you don't need a punter, I guess. But that's not what they're going to do. So we'll get a punter up here. And I think you need another linebacker. I think you have to have at least 4 off-the-ball linebackers. Now, I know some people say, well, Nolan Smith can play a linebacker, off-the-ball linebacker if need be. And I get it. So can Edmonds, as he's a bit of a tweener between safety and linebacker. However, I think you still need another pure off-the-ball linebacker. So I would look for them to possibly make a move there as well. Those are kind of my thoughts on it. It's going to be interesting to see what the Eagles do within the next 24, 48 hours. And just remember, this is the initial 53-man roster. This is not going to be what it looks like come week 1. With that said, take care. Talk to you later. Of course, don't be a dingbat, and remember, it's Howie Vision. We're all just living in it. Howie Roseman does it again. That trade for Albert O was a very sneaky, very good trade. Because what the Eagles are getting is they're getting a tight end that is 6'5", 260 pounds, runs a 4.4, that has tremendous upside, tremendous talent. And now he's going to come behind Dallas Goedert and get to learn how to play the tight end position. This is a good move. And this guy is fast enough where you could almost be like a tweener tight end, tweener wide receiver, like between the two. I think Howie Roseman has once again showed that when he makes a deal, when he makes a trade, he usually wins that trade. That's the way it usually happens. And I'm very happy about this move. And I think that the Eagles keeping 4 tight ends on their roster, though it's a bit of surprise. You look at him, Alberto, and then you look at Grant Calcaterra, and you got to say you have 2 tight ends that are very capable offensively. Denzel Washington out.